As kind of a carryover, the parents need to check their kids' temperatures before they send them to practice. If they send them to practice, then we're putting the onus on the parents that they did validate their kid did not have a temperature when they came to practice. So I guess any questions on the thermometers, because that's part of this training on how to get those. Okay, so a couple things before we get into the COVID training. There is going to be a form for you to fill out so that we can track that everybody attended this training. We are recording it, so it's recording now. We're going to attempt to have that. So if we need to refer back to it, or if we add coaches, or for some reason somebody couldn't attend tonight's training or tomorrow night's training, that they can play it and then they can certify that they've attended the training. We are also going to have a COVID reporting form that if one of your I almost said students, but one of your athletes or your players or your COVID coordinator is exposed to COVID or contracts COVID, that we can follow an actual process this year. So it can be very clear and defined when they can return to play, to try to take some of the confusion out. That was one of the challenges we had in the fall, was the constant, we just struggled to keep up with that. So that will streamline that a little bit. We're going to have Eric Lehner will put those on the website so that everybody can access those forms to report any COVID things. So with that, I'm going to go through the training that we have for the Park District, or that's been approved for the Park District. So let me share my screen here. So we were given some pretty strict guidelines from the Park District on what we needed to do and to get our season kicked off and approved. And this was approved late last week. So that's why we held off on doing the training for today. So let me get to the top of this. I will preface this by some of this, whether you agree with it or you don't agree with some of it, it is, these guidelines are based upon the Illinois Region 10, as well as the IDPH and IHSA, and not necessarily none of these are above and beyond what is required by the state as of right now. If anything changes with the state requirements, then we will make amendments as needed to our protocols. So the first thing is PCBS has supplied hand sanitizer for cleaning hands and equipment to all coaches. They should have had those at equipment pickup day. If you run out or you need more, please let us know and we will replenish that. All participants are required to provide their own mask. We are not providing those this year. The masks with the vent holes are not considered permissible. Pulling your shirt over your face and scarves are not considered permissible face masks. They should be, they can use face shields. They can use the multi-layered cloth masks, the surgical, the medical, the commercial grade, the disposable masks. The gaiters are fine for now, and I think that'll continue to be fine. So going through the plan here, if coaches, if you have a temperature and the temperature mark is considered 100.4 by the state of Illinois, if you feel feverish, or if you are somebody that runs a lower normal body temperature and you feel you have a fever, please use sound judgment and consider that as well. But if you have had a fever within 72 hours, you cannot attend the events. And we are required to ask the players if they are exhibiting any symptoms of COVID. We must wash our hands with soap and water, use the hand sanitizer. We are required to keep attendance logs of all coaches, volunteers, and players who are present at the practices and the games. And we must have a check mark for a temperature check, as well as a check mark for players and coaches that you have no COVID symptoms. So those of you that utilize Game Changer, I believe there's a Game Changer function for check-in. I know TeamSnap has a check-in. If you want to keep an electronic log on a Google Drive, that is all completely acceptable. We just ask that you keep track of it. So, and the reason is if we have a incident, we need to be able to quickly go back and say who has been in contact and attending these last few practices. So keep those logs of attendance. We are required to wear face masks at all times while on district property. That includes while on the field playing as well as in the dugouts. I know that there's people who disagree with this. We have checked with several athletic directors, Buffalo Grove, Palatine High School, Friend High School, Schaumburg, and Hoffman Estates, I think are the ones we've checked with. All are saying they're requiring their spring summer sport athletes at this time to wear masks. So that is the rule. Please do your best to make sure the masks are worn properly and remind kids, and coaches set a good example by making sure you're wearing it at all times. We still need to try to maintain the 6-foot separation when possible. Make sure that you're spraying down and sanitizing equipment when it's being shared. So if you are sharing catcher's equipment, when you switch catchers, make sure you spray off the masks, spray down the equipment. If they share helmets, make sure you spray those in between uses. Same thing with bats or any other equipment, as much as possible. We know to sanitize our hands as much as possible and after handling any equipment. When we are not playing, we must remain in our own dugouts, and we must make sure we're keeping 30 feet between the teams and the other groups. We are encouraging you to exchange your lineups in advance of the games, preferably electronically, or if you can just take a picture of it and text it to the opposing coach. We are going to provide 2 league game balls at each time, and you should use those when you're on defense. So instead of just dropping the ball at the mound and switching sides, take the ball with you. Each team will have their own balls. If for some reason you run out of baseballs, softballs, please let us know, and we will try to get you more. Everyone should have a COVID coordinator on their team. You should have been supplied with either a yellow or an orange safety vest to help identify them. And then, the big thing is making sure, helping the coaches to make sure the kids are staying separated when they're in the dugouts, as well as making sure our parents are in the areas, parents and spectators or fans, that they are not setting up behind the backstops, behind the dugouts, that they're staying in those areas. If you go out to the fields now, our fields crew, as well as some volunteers from Friend and Palatine High School, helped hang, I believe there's 3 signs at each field, one on each side on first base and the third base side, as well as behind the backstop, that shows fans should be beyond the foul poles, or what would be the foul poles on the first and third base sides. So they need to be away from the dugouts, along the foul lines, in those areas. For players, it's pretty much the exact same thing. One thing to keep in mind, unless it's medically necessary, they should not have any food consumed or distributed at the fields. So no sunflower seeds, no gum, as well as no food in the playing area. So keep that out of the dugouts and away from the designated areas. We are recommending that you don't have post-game handshakes, high fives, or fist bumps. The umpires should be wearing face coverings as well as part of this. Others, just some general safety stuff. So any questions up to this point? Good.
I have a question. Hi,
Yes.
This is the Potter family. So here's my frustration and situation. So we run into school issues, right? So I have a kid who plays baseball, and for X, Y, and Z reasons, he was kicked out of school. Maybe a sibling contracted something, or he had a temp. How am I going to follow through with that in baseball? Who's to stop him from coming to baseball? Are we working with the schools?
So we are not communicating with the schools. We do rely on our families to report COVID quarantine. So if they're quarantined from school, they should not be coming to baseball, softball either.
Well, that's a big problem, because we're going to have kids that sneak in. So how do we stop that?
That is a great question, and I don't have a way to enforce that. If there's, I can't answer that question honestly, but we are relying on families to do the right thing and enforce it.
Well, I think it's a question that needs to be escalated because I can already see a bunch of kids I go to school with in my school that will show up even though they were for X, Y, and Z reasons pulled out of school. So I think that's something
if you
that
know of those incidences, we did run into that in the fall where we had families that were quarantined from school that, and then somebody notified us and then we followed through and talked with them and they weren't permitted to attend.
All right, perfect. Then that's what we got to do. All right, thanks.
No problem.
Marcia, I have a really quick question. This is Jason Wagner about the baseballs. If we have a home game, do I not provide any baseballs to the visiting team? We just provide the 2 for our own team and they provide their own?
Yes. So
Okay.
each team should be providing their own.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And that goes for travel as well. Jason, sorry, you're on
We're travelers. Yeah.
travel. Yeah, they tell your teams they should bring the opposing teams, they should bring their own balls.
Okay.
At least that's what I plan to do for my travel team. So for spectators and parents, this is going to fall on your COVID coordinator, but we encourage our coaches to notify all of your families of the rules here, the signage. Bleachers are still closed to spectators. So coaches, you can use the bleachers as areas for your players to spread out, but no spectators are allowed in the bleacher areas. And remind all of your families where they are supposed to be sitting. The areas like at Gabur and Community, they're the blacktop areas. Those are pass-through areas. We please ask all of your families to not make our lives more difficult by sitting out there in that area and say, well, I'm in the pass-through area. Make sure that they know that there are designated areas to watch the games. Setting up camp in those walk-through areas shouldn't be done. And we really don't want to have to be out there, patrolling. That's not our intent. So we just ask everyone if they could please cooperate. What we don't want to have is a call from the park district that we're not following the rules that were agreed to. There is, like I said, there is plenty of signage. They do ask that you should still remain socially distant from people who don't reside in your household. And then if they cannot maintain social distancing, they should be wearing a mask. So on to the COVID positive. If someone does test positive COVID, they should remain at home for a minimum of 10 days after symptom onset, and they can return after feverless and feeling well for at least 72 hours. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Other options are if they have 2 negative COVID test results, and those test results must be conducted at least 24 hours apart, or if they have a doctor's note that is on the doctor's letterhead, they can submit that note to the executive board and we'll review it to see if they're permissible to return. As far as the symptom onset, you do need to remain quarantined from others that are exposed to COVID. We have had instances, so for an example is if Billy has symptoms but doesn't get tested and then feels better, and then 3 days later, Billy's brother has symptoms and he gets tested and tested positive, and then Billy gets tested positive. Billy's 10 days does not start until that positive date, because there's no way to determine if he was exposed when he actually became positive for it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but we can't go back and say, well, he had a cold 3 weeks ago and he felt fine, or he had a sore throat 3 weeks ago, he felt fine, and then his brother tested positive 2 weeks later, so he's already served his quarantine. That doesn't really count as far as your quarantine days. So best way to make sure you return quickly or as soon as possible is that 10 days following a positive test result, or if you've quarantined completely away from everyone else for that 10 days. We are going to have a tracking system. We do have an email set up for COVID@pcbs.fund to report your positive test, and that will help us to communicate with you on the returning of when you can return. So, I got 2 questions. I'm gonna stop right here. Scorekeepers are allowed to sit in the area, but the scorekeeper alone. So the scorekeeper's children can't be sitting in that area. If you have little sibling or additional children, but the scorekeepers are allowed to sit, within the dugout area, so you know what's going on. The fans, the park district is recommending everyone on park district property wear masks, but if you're socially distanced, actually, let me get back to you on that question just to check. Right now, the answer is they're recommending everyone wears masks while on park district property. For coaches, just to know, we do have some guidelines in case we fail to adhere to the procedures. If there's a violation, we want to make sure that honestly it's a clear understanding. We're going to use it as a training exercise that, to make sure that, because some of these are confusing, right? And so I think we're all going to do our best to follow them. So we'll just let you know if there continues to be repeats in that, the team could be suspended for up to 14 days. If there's something that's considered flagrant or intentional violation, so an example of that would be, I don't care what the rules said, you're not wearing masks, that could be result in expulsion from the program. Anything, that the board would consider to be flagrant or severe.
Marcy, how do we enforce that with visiting teams?
So
'Cause I think that's going to be a tough one because we've had some scrimmage games, and on defense, we've had kids where the mask comes rolling up off their chin and covers their eyes in the middle of the field and fielding a play, and it becomes a kind of a safety thing for a kid who's trying to field a ball, running a ball down. So, I don't know how we enforce that with some of the suburbs that we're playing with.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from, Jason. I get it, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but the rule is that they're going to play on our fields. They have to wear masks while in defense, the entire time. So
I just want to
I
make
would
sure
let them know.
we don't get dinged because the other team isn't doing it, but we are. Like, I don't want to get my team suspended for 14 days because the visiting team refuses to do it. Like, I can tell them like 100 times during the game too, but it's tough for me to get suspended for 14 games.
Yeah, I would keep on. I would keep. The best you can do is continue to remind them these are our rules. Let them know ahead of time that these are the park district rules to play on their fields. If it's going to be a huge issue and they refuse to follow them, I mean, we may have to resort to having a lot more away games. But until the state of Illinois changes the rules, these are the rules that the park district and PCBS have agreed to do to be able to use the fields.
Okay.
So Leah asked a question. Hold on. I would suggest to get your answer, I would call the governor of Illinois. That's because this is where it came from on the rules of why we're knee deep in COVID. And now we're moving away from this virus. Mask wearing during play is a distraction, injury, and risk, in her opinion. These aren't our rules. These are the state of Illinois' rules, and we're just required to follow them. So until they make an amendment to this, right now, like I said, the high schools are telling us they're requiring the high school players to wear masks while playing. It's a state rule. So in order to play, they're going to have to wear the masks. If they have a medical condition, we can look at, they have a doctor's note on that. If, but I think right now the rule is, even from the park district, is if they need to have the mask on. So if they can't wear the mask, they're probably not going to be able to play.
How do you know how to use my phone?
Hey, Marcy. So just back to that question that I just put on there. Also on that on the IDPH website, it also says right under low risk for baseball and softball that if it poses an injury risk to the player, that it is not necessary for them to wear the mask.
And when that was updated?
It was.
That's not the information we're getting from the park district.
It was last month.
Okay.
Sometime I think it was March 20th or something like that is when that came out.
So yeah, so our rules, these were required as of last week from the park district. I do know that wrestling is not required to wear masks while competing because they said it's a strangulation risk, and gymnastics while they're on the apparatus are not required to wear it. But IHSA, and so far, the best to my knowledge, is baseball, softball, and the park district is following that.
Okay, but even with wrestling, I understand that. I don't think that any kid should have to wear during competition at all a mask, as long as we're following protocol in the dugouts and with families and everything else. I think that even with the wrestling, it was high risk. They follow in the high risk, and so if they can get away with it, then how are these other towns not forcing this issue? And we are.
That I think we can take that up with the park district. Our park district, I feel, has been very conservative, but they've been very consistent in following exactly what the state of Illinois said. So I can't speak to what other park districts are doing and what they're enforcing. I can only speak to what Palatine Park District is, and as of right now, they're enforcing that we wear masks all the time while on park district property.
Okay, thank you.
So that is our document that we've agreed to with the park district. I am more than happy to try to answer questions. As again, I said, these rules and regulations were not set by PCBS. They were set by, the guidelines that we were given and the agreement, and this is what was approved by the park district. So this is what we've agreed to in order to have a PCBS season in spring of 2021. And as things amend, I have been told the rumor is there's another meeting on April 12th, and we'll see if anything changes coming out of that. But as of right now, this is what we got.
Okay, since you have another meeting, or hopefully if that does happen, is there any reason that you can, or any way you can enforce the safety issue with some of these kids? Because I coach, and I know that a lot of these kids, especially catchers, when they have to wear a mask under their helmet, that mask rides up into their eyes, and it does pose a safety issue.
I'm not part of the April 12th meeting. I'm not important enough to be part of a state of Illinois Department of Public Health meeting, but I know I'm told there is one. So I will just relay the information we get. I will say though that, I coach a travel team, and we've played, I think, 9 games this winter, and all of my catchers, they wore their masks while catching. I know that my son's playing PAFA football for the 8th graders, and I would say we've had 100% compliance of them wearing their masks the last 2 games while playing. I'm not there for the practices, so I can't speak of that, but I have seen the games, and every one of those kids has worn their mask while playing. So I do know that they're able to get it done. It's not ideal, but it is what we've been told we have to do.
I'm sorry, I was not aware it was just the IDPH meeting.
Sorry. I love to be part of it. I just don't think they're
I thought it was the Palatine meeting or something. So all right.
It is my personal. I don't want to speak for PCBS or the park district, but if things changes, we're going to try to. We'll roll this out as soon as any changes as soon as possible. I guess good or bad, right? So there might be amendments to this program or the plan as those happen. We'll make endorsements to this policy.
Hey, Marcy, this is Nate. I just got a question, just based on your experience or anyone else on the phone. Do you have any recommendations for kind of the best kind of mask to enable the athletes to play as unimpeded as possible? Like, are the lightweight surgical masks kind of their best option typically, or are there any other good options that make it less obtrusive?
I think it depends on the kid. My son is, he's 14. He played basketball all season long, and he wore his mask, and I felt his team did a pretty good job of wearing them. And he personally preferred the throwaway disposable masks, I got them on Amazon. Those, and you know, he would just change it between games. For the football, what they've done is it's a I don't know what type of material it is, more like a, it's not a felt, but it's not a straight cotton either. And it secures their actual helmets, to the face mask on their helmet. So when they pull their helmet on and off, it covers their mouth, and it's, as opposed to going around the face, it's more, you know, inside of their face mask, but still pretty close to their mouth. So that one, I know he doesn't seem to mind that one. It doesn't bother him for football at all. And then he's not having to worry about as the helmet comes up and down. I don't know. I have not tried to do that for like the girls' face masks or the batting helmets. The boys' helmets don't have face mask on them, so you can't really do that with the boys. But those are some options. And then my daughter prefers the gaiter, that she has one that goes over her ears, so her ears stick out and it pulls up and down. She prefers that one. So I think it might depend on the kid, but those are some options.
If any of the kids test positive, are we asking for the repeat test as a rapid test or the nasal swab test?
So if they test positive, they just need the 2 tests that are conducted 24 hours apart. So we'll accept the rapid or the nasal, but they have to have
Okay.
2, or they have to wait that 10 days.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Well, if you have any questions,
If somebody on the team tests positive, does the whole team end up having to quarantine?
yeah,
Okay.
the whole team will have to quarantine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there anything, I mean, if you're about to call it here, is there anything specific we need for our safety coordinators?
Your safety coordinators should have gotten some specific training, but they should have that, the vest that they should wear, and they should be the ones to help control who's coming in and out of, you know, the dugout, make sure they're documented, and then just help to control make sure the spectators, they're kind of responsible for everything going on outside of the field. So that way the coaches can concentrate on actually coaching.
Okay.
And enforcing these signals.
All right, and is this document is to be emailed out to everybody?
Sorry, you broke up. Can you say it again?
Is this document
emailed? I've attempted to record this, and we'll put it on the PCBS website.
He's also, can you send out the protocol?
Yeah, so we'll post the protocol on the website. We'll send it to the coaches. We'll also send out the document so you can certify that you attended the training, so we can keep record of that. So we'll actually probably create a COVID folder on the PCBS website. I just got to work with Eric Laner to get that done. Okay, any questions? All right, thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Marcy.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Marcy.
Thanks.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thanks. Is
Thank you
Jay
very much.
Heilman still here? Are you still here to answer your question? Did he jet?
Marcy, I'm here. I'm with Jay.
Hi, guys.
I think the answer is yes until we hear back, right?
Yeah, I mean, the park district is asking everybody. Try to encourage parents to wear them, especially if they're not able to socially distant. Should.
Sounds like highly encouraged, right?
Better to be safe than
Yeah.
sorry for now. So. Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad we don't have a game for a couple of weeks, so I'm glad we'll let it all kick in and people get used to it before we have a game. So
Okay.
see what happens.
All right.
All right, take care. Thanks,
Thanks,
Marcy.
guys. See ya.